Good afternoon. My name is Ken Sorensen. I'm a retired high school and junior college history and English teacher. And now in retirement, yeah, that's a joke, retirement. Now in retirement, I get the wonderful opportunity of being able to make historical presentations across the valley. And with this modern technology of Zoom, that really helps, because as we're all dealing with this crazy time of COVID and its impact, why Zoom communications make it so much easier. So I'm grateful for the opportunity today to talk to you about one of the truly great giants in the scientific world. And her name is Madame Marie Curie. Marie Curie was a French-Polish physicist and lived from 1867 to 1934. This is a picture of the home, the family home that she was born into. And obviously it's a pretty good sized place. It's beautiful there in Warsaw, Poland. This is a picture, some of the early pictures of her family. The picture on the right are her parents. And if you're Polish or understand that language, I'm going to apologize right up front and tell you that I'm not fluent in that, and I will no doubt just butcher the pronunciations of some of these names, and it's not intentional, and I apologize, and I'm sorry, but anyway, we'll do the best we can do. The parents' names were Bronislawa and Władysław, and the last name is Skrzydławska. The picture on the right is a younger picture of the parents. The picture on the left is several years later of the father and three of the daughters. Maria is on our, as we're looking at the picture, Maria is on the far left, and then two of the other daughters on the right. Now here is a much younger picture of the children when they were all, and there was 5 children, and Marie was the youngest. And this is just kind of an interesting picture because it captures a really good family group. As we're looking at the picture there, on the far left is the oldest sister, Zosia, and then Helena, and that littlest girl there in the middle, her birth name was Maria, and she later changed it to Marie, I'm sorry. And then the only boy in the family, Joseph, and then on the far right, Bronya. And you can pretty much guess the birth order. Marie there in the middle is the youngest, and the little girl on her immediate right is the next one, then the boy, and then on the far right, and then on the far left would be the reverse birth order. And her father was a well-known math and physics teacher. Her mother was the head teacher at a girls' boarding school. And after the children started to come along, and they had several children, then it became very difficult for mom to leave the home because of the care of the children. And so the family ended up taking on boarders, and these boarders were other children. And so there was a household of kids, and that did help cash flow to some degree. But the problem was, as we all know, children aren't always the healthiest. And that came back to create a problem for the household. Because when Marie was 7 years old, the oldest sister there on the far left, Zosia, died. And then 4 years later, Marie's mother died when Marie was 11 years old. And so it's directly related to health issues that were brought into the household from some of the boarders. Now, this is a picture of Marie when she was approximately 16 years old. This is one of the earlier known pictures of her. And she's showing what is a quality of life for her. She's showing a very intense concentration level, and she was very intense throughout her life on how she did things. This is the picture of her father with the daughters. On the far left again is Maria, and then as next to the father on the father's left is Bronya, and then Helena. And this picture was taken approximately in the 1890. Marie had again been born in 1867. And as she was growing up, she was a very good student and was anxious in learning all that she could possibly learn. And it became obvious that not much was going to be possible beyond a extended education, beyond high school. There was a school called the Flyers University that was open for women, but nothing else was. And it wasn't, she wanted a very rigorous curriculum, and it really didn't qualify. And her older sister, Bronya, here, they had decided that they were both going to end up wanting to get much better educated. And so they wanted to go to the Sorbonne in Paris, and while there, get a great education. But the family couldn't really afford to send both of them. And so what was decided between the two girls, it was that they were literally going to, one was going to go off and go to school, and the other was going to stay home and work and help support the student at school. And so they essentially flipped a coin, and Bronya won, and Marie agreed to stay home, and for several years worked at home. And in that process, she became essentially what we would call a nanny, and caring for small children in various homes, and was able to help Bronya, and did a very good thing, but it delayed, obviously, Marie's education to a great degree. Now, while she was there, still in Warsaw, she did throw herself into extensive reading. When she was finally able to get to Paris, and that's where this drawing of Marie Curie is taken. She got there in 1891, and got involved in the school year. And it became obvious pretty quickly that she was afraid of this, that she was not adequately academically prepared. And she literally threw herself into studying. And for a short period of time, she moved in with her sister and her sister's husband. And that wasn't ideal for everyone. And so she ended up finding a very small apartment. And that helped her because she could literally study all hours of the day and night, and did. And she became an incredibly diligent student. She was able to finish her first degree in physics in the summer of 1893, and the second degree in math in 1894. And she was able to also, in this process, became very much acquainted with the faculty there, and they quickly recognized that this is a superior student. And some of them got together and helped get her a degree, to get her a scholarship, and that was given annually to outstanding Polish students. And that helped a lot, and that made her living situation a whole lot easier and a whole lot better. But to complete the math degree, it was really, really interesting, because what they wanted her to do as part of the senior project with it, they wanted her to do a study relating magnetic properties of different steels and then their chemical composition. and she was looking for a lab to perform all those tests and try to make it work. Well, during this time, she wrote a very interesting letter to her brother while still at home. And in that letter, she wrote a very interesting quote. And the quote is this: "We must believe that we are gifted for something and that this thing must be attained." When I said a little bit ago that she was just tremendously determined and focused, boy, that's understating the case. Once she determined where she was going to go and what she was going to do, she literally, our term today would be workaholic, and she truly, truly was. This is a picture of the Sorbonne in Paris and the school that she went to. And it was a wonderful school because it was open to women. And that was not the case in many schools all over the world. And she was able to get in there, and she was able to associate with some of the finest minds that were in the world there. And she did very, very well. One of the people that she ran into was this man, and his name is Pierre Curie. He was a struggling professor, an associate professor, and he was also trying to do some research on the side, and they ran into each other, and they were both of the opinion that they individually were never going to get married, that they were always going to be single. They were always going to live out their life as just literally married to their research and their craft. And they were very strongly driven people, and they started working together because she needed lab space and he had some lab space, and that brought them into contact with each other. And of course they would discuss their various projects and what they were researching and trying to find. And in that process, they began to realize that they started to have feelings for each other. And it turned out to be really a good thing, because these two people, they actually found what the modern term would be soulmate, because both were driven, both absolutely loved the field of math and science and engineering and all of that. They were just driven to find new areas and ways of knowledge. And it turned out to be a very good thing. She had tried to tell him and tried to deny feelings. And she said, "No, I'm going to go back to Poland and I'm going to teach." And he said, "If you go back to Poland, I will follow you. And if I have to teach high school math, I will do that to be near you." And he finally convinced her that their future was together, and that the best place that they could be would be to be together and to literally work together and go forward. This next picture is a very interesting picture, because this is what they would often do on weekends. And this was their holidays. And they even went on their honeymoon with their bicycles. And that was interesting. And the honeymoon took place in the summer of 1895. And they absolutely adored each other. They really, really did. Now, he is a brilliant scientist in his own right. He really is. And we know that. And we know that he had a bigger vision, because when he and her both received a joint Pulitzer, or a joint Nobel Prize in 1903. In the speech that he gave in receiving that tremendous honor, he said, "I am one of those excuse me, who believe with Nobel," meaning Alfred Nobel, "that mankind will derive more good than harm from the new discoveries." He's referring to the fact that Alfred Nobel's greatest accomplishment was inventing dynamite. And has dynamite been very destructive? Oh, yes. Has dynamite been used for good? Yes. And Curie is trying to say, look, I know that Nobel created something that created problems, and yet it's been done a lot of good. He said, I think our inventions will also derive more good than harm. And a very good man, all around, a very good man. He's a French physicist. He was actually 8 years older than she was. Pioneer. And I don't even know, I can't even explain to you what some of these terms are, okay? Crystallography, magnetism, piezoelectricity, radioactivity, and a Nobel laureate, and famous for winning the Nobel Prize in Physics with his wife, Marie. Throughout his research, he is still considered one of the main founders of modern physics. Is this man intelligent? Oh, absolutely. Incredibly intelligent. And in the 1890s, he and his wife are working there in their lab. And what they've done is they're trying to analyze all kinds of materials and metals, and they're trying to isolate a gas and identify the concept that there's seemingly light emitting from it. What they're really talking about is what we would call radioactivity. And it took a while for them to isolate this, and she actually coined the term radioactivity. And that is quite an impressive accomplishment all by itself. What they're doing here is that they're taking away an amount of bismuth, which is a residue with greater activity when you heat it. And they had found a substance that was about 300 times more strongly emitting a light and a gas than uranium. And when they wrote about it in 1898, they thought that they had found a good source of it. They then found a substance called pitchblende. Now, pitchblende is something, it's a rock, and it's something similar to coal. And what they figured out they're going to have to do is they're going to have to start taking that pitchblende and breaking it up and then boiling it and fine-tuning it, literally. What they're trying to do is get to this. And pitchblende is not easy to work with. They would have sacks of it delivered to their laboratory, and then you'd have to put it in a kind of a large container, and then you take a pole and you start beating on it, and you're trying to break it down into little bitty pieces, and then you would filter it out, and then you'd heat it, and this particular picture, it starts to bubble. And the bubble is what they're trying to get to, because it's going to have a radioactive gas in it. In the process, they found there was something else in the pitchblende. And they decided that the first substance that they created, they named radium, but they figured out that there's something else in there. And they kept looking and kept looking and kept trying to find it, because what is left over, the residue that's left over, is still emitting light and power. And they know there's something else in there. When they finally identify it, she had promised that as soon as they did, they would name it in honor of her homeland. And the new material was called polonium. And so they actually discovered radium and polonium. And that is one of the premier achievements of their lives. And in the process, they are constantly working. And here is a very good picture of the two of them. And they're just well known and highly respected because they literally they worked together to create one of the great accomplishments of mankind, and that is identifying isotopes of radium and polonium. That turned out to be just huge. And you can see they're just constantly working here in this picture. One of the great quotes from her says, "Life is not easy for any of us, but what of that? We must have perseverance and, above all, confidence in ourselves. We must believe that we are gifted for something and that this thing must be attained." She was not only diligent, but also well-informed, and she knew what she was about. She just did. And she's constantly working to try and attain what she's about. The discovering of radium and polonium, they are two radioactive elements. Radium got its name from the Latin word radius, meaning ray. Polonium was named after Poland, the place where Marie Curie was born. And she was always pleased to be able to name that after her homeland. This is kind of an interesting plaque, literally on the side wall of a building there on the Sorbonne in Paris. And it says that this is the laboratory where the Curies discovered radium in 1898. And what an incredible accomplishment. Now, this next picture is a copy of the Nobel Prize that was awarded to both Pierre and Marie Curie. And what a beautiful, beautiful thing this is. And it's written in Swedish, and so, you know, it's not easy to completely understand, but close to the top of it, you can read the date, 12th of November, 1903, and that's when they were officially awarded this Nobel Prize. And you notice their name is printed, Pierre Curie and Marie Curie. This is the first time a woman has been given a Nobel Prize. And what a phenomenal accomplishment. And when they came to Pierre and told him, "We're going to award you the prize," and he said, "No, I will not accept it at all unless her name is on it." And with him, it was never any question. And it was his insistence, because women were not normally given the respect, especially in the scientific field. And he said, "I will not accept it unless she's involved." And so this was a huge, huge step in the acknowledgement of what women are truly capable of doing. Did she get a lot of backlash? Absolutely. And that's why this quote from Einstein is very, very good. Einstein once wrote a letter to Marie Curie and advised her to ignore the haters, telling her, "Look, lady, you are intelligent, off the charts intelligent. You can do great things. Don't worry about what anybody is saying. Don't worry about what anybody is doing. You just do what you know to be important and you need to accomplish. And just go forward, and go forward with faith in you and what you're doing." And very impressive, good advice, and it was well received. Now, she was the first woman with a degree in physics. She was the first woman to graduate in France. She's the first woman to obtain a Nobel Prize. She's the first woman to obtain, excuse me, a chair at the Sorbonne. She's the first scientist to obtain 2 Nobel Prizes. was she a premier example of great accomplishments by a woman? Absolutely. One of the most profound. This picture was taken in 1904, and it's their oldest daughter, Irene, and their family is starting and coming along. And about the time this picture was taken, she had, because this little girl is about 5 or 6 during when this picture was taken, and Marie had been pregnant about a couple of years before this picture, and with what would have been her their second child, and unfortunately she suffered a miscarriage, and there was about almost a year of recovery because, and looking back now, it's very likely that it was just because of the constant the constant contact with radioactive material. And they struggled mightily because nobody really knew the effect of radioactivity on a human body. And they're some of the first that had any contact with this. And she struggled with its effects, as did he. And then one of the biggest tragedies that ever happened in the scientific world, and specifically in Marie Curie's world. And that was on April the 19th, 1906. Pierre is in Paris, downtown, one evening, and he is out on an errand, and he's in an intersection, and it's really hard to figure out how this could have even happened, but somehow he went out on the street. Was he not paying attention? Was he not looking? Was he? It'll never be known. But he was struck by a horse-drawn carriage and hit and killed instantly. And it just about undid her world. It really did. She was absolutely just not only heartbroken emotionally because she's lost her husband and the father of their 2 children, but she's also lost because he is her #1 advocate. He is her #1 support. He is brilliant as she is brilliant. And it just was really, really too bad for all kinds of reasons. What is really interesting, though, is the aftermath. And the aftermath is this, because by this time, because of the Nobel Prize, Pierre is the head of the physics department in the Sorbonne in Paris. The school administration comes to her and offers her that position, not just a professorship, but the head of the department. And that was huge because you couldn't find women professors, let alone department chairs. And she is given that position. And what an incredible position. And that also means that she will do some teaching too. But this is a beautiful picture of department chairs at the Sorbonne in 1907. It was a momentous day when she walked into the classroom for the first time. And that's what this picture is showing. And it actually made the front cover of that magazine in Paris. The room is jammed with people. And what were they expecting? What were they looking for? Because everybody knew she is incredibly famous. She is a world figure. She's a scientist of the first renown. And she's now going to be teaching classes. And the place was jammed, not only with students that had signed up to take that class, but it was jammed with, it was jammed with other college professors. It was jammed with journalists and government officials. And I don't know what everybody was expecting, but here was this small, frail-looking woman who stood up and started talking about what she knew. And she absolutely had credibility in every direction. and she was amazing. One of the quotes from her: "You cannot hope to build a better world without improving the individuals. To that end, each of us must work for his own improvement, and at the same time, share a general responsibility for all humanity, our particular duty being to aid those to whom we think we can be the most useful." What a good way a good philosophy and a good way to live your life. And trying to improve ourselves and the world and make the world a better place to be. Wow, a great way going forward. This is a picture of the two children. This is Irene on the right as we're facing the picture, and Eve on the left. And Irene grew up to be a scientist like her parents. And Eve grew up to be a journalist. And Mom, after the death of Dad, struggled in their relationship with the children because she absolutely refused to ever talk about their father. And because to her, it was just the pain was too intense. And it would have been a very difficult household to grow up into, because she is so driven and so motivated. And yet these two little girls grew up and accomplished respectively great things in their lives. And I will come back to that point at the end of the presentation. I've loved this quote from Madame Curie: "Be less curious about people and more curious about ideas." And very good point of view. Very good point of view. In 1911 was the first Solvay convention, conference in Paris. And this is dedicated to the concept of discussing openly the preeminent problems in physics and chemistry. If you will notice, she is the only woman there. If you will also notice one other thing, in the row behind her standing up, the person the second from the end on the right, that is Albert Einstein. If you're heavily into science, several of these other people will probably, you'll probably recognize, including the man right behind her. That is Rutherford, who has a tremendous impact on science in that first decade of the 1900s and beyond, and several other very important people. But she's the only woman there. And what an impressive honor. A very impressive honor, because everybody knows she's going to add tremendously to the discussion on physics and chemistry. In 1911, she was also awarded a second Nobel Prize. And this is a copy of that Nobel Prize certification. And it had to do with the fine-tuning of her discussions, and of her discoveries of radium and polonium. And again, the first woman to ever win 2 Nobel Prizes. This is a picture of her and her daughter, Irene. Her daughter, Irene, had gone on into the medical field and found that that was very important, but borderline into research, because that's more where her heart really lies. Irene was instrumental in getting Mom involved in something that is absolutely amazing. And this next 2 pictures will show that. When World War I broke out, World War I, obviously, if you look at a map of Europe, it literally covers much of the main body of the country of Europe, or of the countries of Europe. And there are X-ray machines available for the care of the wounded. The problem is the X-ray machines are only in hospitals in the major cities. And daughter Irene came to mom, Madame Marie Curie, and said, we need to be able to get help medically to the field where the wounded are. And so they took part of an invention by Curie, who is a Frenchman, who had developed what became known as X-rays. And Madame Curie, trying to get funding to put together a fleet of vehicles to go out and literally go into the fields, into the battlefields, and help medically. And this is her driving one of these. And here's another picture of them. What this become, they're called the little Curies. And it's, or and one of the other terms for it is the radiological car. What is interesting is that she created the concept of mobile X-rays. And so how do you power one in a wagon like this? She created the concept of building an electrical generator that gets power from the engine running, and that generator will generate enough power to create the ability to run an X-ray machine inside this van. And it absolutely transformed the medical care of soldiers. And she helped bring about there's over 150 of these things. And she insisted not only on being involved in their development, she helped design and help supervise the building of these. She also helped training nurses to be able to operate the vehicles and operate the machines. And she was out in the field often after battles are concerned. And she was amazing, absolutely amazing in helping to do all of this and moving the concept of the importance of X-rays forward to where they're actually needed, and did a great job with this. She literally, all of her life, our term it, just literally worked herself to death without question. And she's just constantly throwing herself into finding new ways of development and growth and better use of things. This is an interesting picture because that's obviously Madame Curie on the left. The woman on the right is a woman by the name of Marie Melanie. Marie Melanie is an American journalist, and in 1920, as the war is wrapping up, goes to France and reports to some degree on that, and quickly gets connected to Marie Curie and interviews her and sees the labs there that Marie Curie is working with, and is shocked to find out that Madame Curie is, they're not necessarily state-of-the-art labs. And Miss Melanie promises that she's going to go home to America and help raise money to bring about better facilities for Madame Curie. Now, did she do it? Yes, she did. This is a picture of when Madame Curie comes to America. The picture on the left, Madame Curie is standing next to President Warren G. Harding in 1921, and he had also taken up the cause because of what she had done, and he helped encourage the raising of money that helped bring about the purchase of a gram of radium that she was able to take back to Paris, and that was a big deal. And in the picture on the right, they're coming down out of the steps of the White House, down those famous steps. And that is President Harding with Madame Curie. And she was in America on a tour, and she was nationally recognized for who she was and what she had done. This is a particular picture of her in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and there she is meeting with some other scientists, trying to explain to them the importance of development and research and growth and moving forward. And what can we do? And she was just constantly driven. This is a picture of her in 1929. She has come back to the United States. This is Herbert Hoover, president. And President Hoover has also helped raise some money. This time he actually presented her a check for $50,000 that she was able to take back and continue in her research in Paris. And obviously that was a wonderful, wonderful thing, because it also helped fund an additional laboratory in Warsaw. This is an incredible picture, and we saw this earlier, but I bring it back now because of the wording around the picture. This picture shows 3 Nobel Prize winners. It shows Madame Curie, who won the Nobel Prize twice in physics and chemistry. It shows her husband, Pierre, who won in physics, and their daughter, Irene, who ends up winning the Nobel Prize in 1931 for chemistry, making the Curies the family with the most Nobel laureates to date. No small achievement. And what's interesting is the rest of the family history, and that's why this slide is so impressive. Of the families to have pursued generations of research, the Curies are arguably the first family of science. Marie Curie and husband Pierre were pioneers in the study of radioactivity, winning the 1903 Nobel Prize in Physics. In 1911, she won a second Nobel Prize, this time in chemistry. Their older daughter, Irene, kept up the family tradition when she and her husband, Frederick, won the 1935 Nobel Prize for chemistry and their discovery of artificial radioactivity. The younger daughter, Eve, became a writer and journalist, and while she didn't join the Nobel Club, her husband, Henry Richardson Labuse, received the Nobel Peace Prize in 1965 on behalf of UNICEF, which is kind of interesting. And Irene and Frederick's children became scientists. Helene is a nuclear physicist, and Pierre is a noted biologist. First family of science? Yeah, I would say so. An incredible accomplishment over generations of time, and how amazing, how amazing. One of her quotes where she said, "We believe the substance extracted from pitchblende contains a metal not yet observed, related to bismuth by its analytical properties. If the existence of this new metal is confirmed, we propose to call it polonium for the name of the original country of one of us." And she was happy to share with that. The idea of pounding rock and putting it into a powder and then boiling it and then filtering it and then trying to extract the gas out of that to identify radium and identify polonium is still absolutely incredible. Here is a picture of what pitchblende looks like. In order to obtain 1 decigram of pure radium chloride salt, Marie had to sift through hundreds of tons of pitchblende. Now, this piece there on the screen right now is a piece approximately about 6 inches across and about 4 inches wide and then about 2 inches deep. And they would get sacks of this filled with pitchblende. And you've got to literally break this into bits and pieces and take it through the process. Hundreds of tons. You'd be working all hours of the day and night for years, and that's exactly what they did. There's one story of Pierre where they noticed that on his arm, it was starting to get a very ugly sore. And they figured out that it was from this gas. And it was scary because on one hand, they knew that working with this could possibly be detrimental to their health. But on the other hand, nobody was doing anything like this. Nobody had any idea in this particular direction of science. And they were, what they did was just absolutely amazing. Probably one of the best books on Madame Curie is this one, translated by Vincent Sheehan. And it really, really helps to better understand all that she did and who she was. And it gives a lot of background, and in detail, it explains the scientific accomplishments, and it gives you a better perspective on the importance of who she was and what she did and the difference that she made in our modern world. I've always loved this quote from Albert Einstein. Marie Curie is, of all celebrated beings, the only one whom fame has not corrupted. What an amazing, amazing quote about her. And she was very, very pragmatic. This is the beautiful statue that is erected in Warsaw, Poland, in her home city, home country, in honor of who she was and what she had done. And it's a beautiful, beautiful statue. They were both buried, both she and Pierre, her husband, were buried in Paris. And in 1995, French President Francois Mitterrand brought all kinds of famous people and had them reinterred into a building known as the Pantheon in Paris. And there were famous writers, famous musicians, famous military people, famous scientists, and two of the scientists that were reinterred there were husband and wife, Pierre Marie and Marie Curie. These two people absolutely changed our world. These two people impacted, going forward, what would happen in our modern world. If you've ever dealt with x-rays, if you've ever dealt with chemotherapy treatment, if you've ever dealt with any kind of radiation, these two people, and primarily her, but these two people put together the framework that made all of that possible. And he was heavily involved until his death, and afterwards for the next 30 years, almost 30 years before she passed away, was put all that together and made a huge difference in our modern world. She is so amazing and shows us the importance of standing up for and doing what's right, regardless of the consequences and regardless of the personal effect it had on their lives. And it did have a gigantic effect on their lives. And in closing, there was 2 years ago, a movie came out called Radioactivity. And it's a fairly decent explanation of who she was and what she was. And it gives you some pretty good background on her. And I would recommend the movie. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the opportunity of spending time with you today and sharing with you the story of Madame Curie and her family and how she's affected our world. And she is most impressive. And take care. Thank you and good day.